need to be.
We're gonna start this?
Yeah, let's
Although
let's
Tim
start
has
the
to
actual
get here.
meeting.
We need Tim, don't we?
Okay, we're live there. We're recording here. We're good.
All right, we're going to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order, January 16th, 2019. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Kelly is here. Alderman at large, Laws, sorry.
Here.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderman Harry Gathright.
Present.
We have 6 present, and the mayor is
I'm
also
here.
Yep.
First, we have public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to the committee for any reason? There is no one. Now, we have 2 items related to the Performing Arts Center. Tim is in the other meeting and should be here momentarily. We can take them without him. I mean, he's provided. But maybe we should take it out of order and go to the third item, which is the Packer.
Sure.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding purchase of 1 rear load Packer trash truck with a value of $276,254.
And we have here from Public Works, the fleet manager, to answer any questions. And you can come sit at one of the chairs if that. Are there any questions or discussion regarding the Packer? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. If I may ask a question, I see this as a rear loader, and I know the barrels in my neighborhood go with the side loader. Correct. You know, and, you know, I thought eventually we'd be phasing out rear loaders, but evidently they still have a purpose with the city.
There's quite a few places in the city that the automated trucks can't reach to the curb and that, so it requires them to. go down. And
Downtown,
also-
narrow
Oh,
street.
They
I
also
see.
use it
Okay,
for soft
yeah.
yard waste.
A lot of, where there's narrow streets, a lot of cars on the street.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, 'cause that makes sense, because like I say, I look at it how convenient it is, you know, and,
Oh, yeah.
and picking up off the side, but thank you for my point, thank you.
All right, any other discussion, questions?
I'm going to move.
Oh, have you done it yet?
I have not.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to McNeilius Truck and Manufacturing, Inc. in the amount of $276,254. Funds are available in Department 168, Solid Waste Surf. Now.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Why don't we go to the 4th item while Mr. Stewart is here? Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding purchase of 1 front loader and 1 side loader solid waste vehicles with a value of $637,421. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to McNeilius Truck and Manufacturing, Inc. in the amount of $637,421. Source of funding is Department 168, Solid Waste Surf.
Questions? Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. Now let's return to the first item, which will require Mr. Cummings to come forward.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding construction management services contract for 201 Main Street Performing Arts Center with a value TBD.
So why don't you fill us in on the background and
Sure.
short explanation?
For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development for the city. What's before you is a contract, I believe, for construction management services. We're doing design build. We don't have the design in place yet, and so therefore we're not necessarily sure what that value will be, which is how you predicate the value of the construction manager contract. What we do have is an agreed-to formula, which, based off of the design, they will receive a set dollar based off of what is designed. I believe it's 2.9%, which is in the contract. All the terms in the contract are substantially similar. This is something we needed to get on the, that you've seen in the past. This is something we needed to get on the agenda because we're trying to make a very tight timeline We are still working through some of the details. As you all know, I will be coming before the Board of Aldermen regularly, once a month, to give continuous updates. I will be happy to give you an update as to how this contract progresses once we finalize the actual dollar amount, which we anticipate to be over the next couple weeks.
And this will have to go to the full board as well.
It may not.
It may not.
Definitely the architect will.
Definitely anything over $1 million is what I'm
Right.
thinking. But I guess 2.9% is not. Anyway, all right, so the proposal is for Harvey Construction. Obviously, the city has dealt with Harvey many times. Are there any discussion, questions, anything about the contract? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cummings, is what you say, because I've never really seen the to-be-determined amount come before this board, so, I am somewhat cautious with it. But you gave a good explanation of what it is. But is that inside Harvey's contract, that is the 2 whatever number that you quoted? Is that in the?
Yes.
Because I haven't really poured over the contract 100%, but
Yes.
it is clearly stated. So it is a determined amount and if I may have a follow-up, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, of course.
If for some unforeseen reason, would a change order come back to the committee for that as with our usual procedure?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Alderwoman Kelly.
Yeah, I too saw the TBD and was concerned. I was wondering why we wouldn't put a not to exceed, which we've done in the past, based on this formula.
I don't know what that number is. Not to exceed what?
I guess that's my question. I feel uncomfortable approving something that I don't know what that value is going to be, if you don't know what that value is going to be.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think we have a pretty good understanding of projected estimates, right? So we know that per the bond resolution, $15.5 million has been authorized. We are anticipating somewhere in the vicinity of a little over $1 million of design. But I would not want to be held to that number explicitly because you do have that other rule, which is you have to come back for every $10,000 increment changes. And that is a tough type of contract to manage. So that's just a tough scenario to be in. So having the flexibility would help greatly. And at the end of the day, it's very transparent process. I am coming before the Board of Aldermen regularly. I can gladly give you updates.
Alderwoman Karen.
Oh, thank you. I understand what you're saying, Director Cummings, but we've had change orders come through for many, many items. And as far as the $10,000 purchasing that has to come before finance, we're looking that next week that'll be changed. So that would not affect anything here. In my 8 years of being here, I've never seen a to be determined. And if we're looking at that, it's going to be $1.5 million of architectural fees, and that percentage, we should be figuring that in. I think it only you talk about transparency, but this is very difficult for us to sit here and say, okay, it's like opening the pocketbook and letting the money flow without having some control over it. And your coming before the board is to give us an update, which I think is a great thing. But for the Finance Committee, this is what we have to approve. And I know that over the last 6 months, we've approved millions of dollars for wastewater and then have had to come back and make changes because they've had unexpected issues. So, I have to agree with my two colleagues that this could be a concern for a lot of us.
Well, now, when you
So-
speak of the $1 million, that's the architect, that's not the 3%.
That's on top of that, right?
Right.
So if I may, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor?
go ahead.
I mean, if it's the pleasure of the committee, if you want to put a number in not to exceed $350,000, I think that is a reasonable figure. It's an estimate on my part. I did anticipate this issue coming up. I will say that I want it to be explicitly clear, particularly for our finance team here in the city, that that money will probably, the overage, because I'm coming in a little high, will need to be transferred to maybe another line item in the project, and I don't want to be held up because I'm told that Finance Committee approved it for this dollar amount explicitly. I can't use that money now in a different way, because that just ties my hands to be able to manage this project effectively. And that was one of the reasons why I really wanted it to be done this way. But if it's the pleasure of the committee to put it at $350,000, not to exceed, with the understanding that there's more money than probably going to be necessary, and we will be looking to change that, I'm fine with that.
Alderwoman Karen.
It's fine. Thank you. For me, I would rather see a figure, but I would prefer you to come in a little bit lower and then come to us and say, because of issues that we didn't know came up, we need another $25,000 toward the project. I don't think anybody on the committee is trying to stall or keep things from moving forward, but I think, me personally, I think it's important that there's something there, that I see a figure there. And it's not, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but that's a concern that I would have. And I know I would be getting phone calls about that.
Alderwoman Clee.
I see merits in all sides, in truth, and I understand that if we did it at a lower value, that would mean that you might be coming in a little bit more regularly, and it's subject to whoever's on the board at the time, which could change in a year with an election coming up, and I understand the anxiety of something like that. So I can see why you might not want to come in at a lower figure. I'm all for the performing arts, but I have to agree with my colleagues. We will be getting phone calls if we don't have some number in there. And at the same time, I would be wrong if I didn't say, I also understand that you may, on the fly, need to take that money and use it in a different location. I don't know how much flexibility that you have going from line item to line item as far as finance is concerned, and perhaps Mr. Kukin can answer that, but.
Mr. Cummings.
Thank you. If I may, it's the issue is relative to time. And the good example I can give you is, somewhere between November and the first of the year, how many times did this finance committee meet to actually authorize differing type of changes? The reality is you met, I think, once, maybe twice in an 8-week period, 10-week period, and that's okay and fine because we're all busy. But if I'm trying to keep this project on time and on schedule, an 8 and 10-week delay could be really difficult. And that's the issue.
Well, for, just in terms of allocation, Mr. Griffin is here. Maybe you should come up. Just in terms of this allocation, just because the committee were to approve a maximum figure, that does not tie finance to that figure. I mean, there would be still a flexibility to, if the maximum figure were 350 and we only needed 300,
Right.
there would be nothing regarding the approval that would prevent the 50,000 that was unnecessary from being expended on something else, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think there's a couple of competing things going on here. You folks are going to be hearing in public hearing, moving $50,000 from an LED project to work on a school project. That is what you folks need to do from a Board of Aldermen. This is a situation where you've already authorized $15.5 million of bonding. Furthermore, so we've spent $2 million to purchase the building. The committee, the team working on it was able to get the board to allow the construction manager and the architect That's part of that 15.5 million. What you're approving is contracts, and I think the way you're proceeding is not to exceed. If Director Cummings or the mayor needs another contract to fulfill what you folks want to do to get the project going and continuing, there may be another contract, but it shouldn't hold up in any kind of material way votes. So I think,
So
I think
what
that.
you're saying is,
Go ahead. yeah,
as long
thank
as
you.
we're under the not to exceed number, if the full not to exceed number were not required, there's nothing that would prevent the extra 50 or 25,000 or whatever it is to be allocated somewhere else within the authorized project.
Correct, that's the way I look at it. You're gonna have a series of agreements,
But if
contracts.
there, but if for some reason there were a recommendation or a requirement that the not to exceed number be exceeded, then you would have to come back to the committee.
Correct.
Unless it was less than whatever the amount of, whatever the floor or the ceiling is, whether it's 10,000 or 25 or whatever we do. If it's less than that, the committee could simply be informed, but if it were exceeded whatever the requirement is at that time, we would need to come back.
Correct.
Alderman O'Brien.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As many of my colleagues remember, in another committee, I did write a proposal where we, raised the amount that Mr. Cummings said from 10,000 to 25,000, and now it's going to the next step. I think will be hopefully passes within the Board of Aldermen, and I felt very comfortable in doing that. And the reason is because we have Mr. Griffin as the CFO and Mr. Coogan. There's many people watching the pot here as controllers and looking at the project, and they're watching. So I feel very comfortable. In that regard of the 25,000, that's stuff that's already was pre-budgeted. Okay, so we already pre-budget to get back to the same, mix here. We already assigned $15 million in a way to this project. So I think maybe what we're kind of concerned with, what I'm concerned with, and I think the public is concerned with, is not so much the dollar amount, but that the money is being spent on the project that it is. And I just want to throw out there, if we have comptrollers that are watching us, and Mr. Griffin and Mr. Cummings and Mr. Coogan and the mayor, would this satisfy this board if Mr. Cummings did come back and report to the board the financial progress of this, so that we know what the dollars amount is being set? That way, unless you want that really cold hard number, but I'm saying, I would, feel comfortable looking at, a financial report that comes back to this particular board, that we can determine that we're in the right direction. And therefore, that would give us the authority to, monitor the project well. And I'll throw that out there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, if the construction were 13,500,000, 2.9% is 391,000.
At 13 and a half?
Yes.
Okay. And then maybe safely say 400.
And where I get 13.5 is 15.5 minus 2 million for acquisition. So the motion pending is simply to approve as proposed.
I didn't move.
Uh,
Do we want to move to amend?
Well, I just wanted to get going. Why don't we make a motion to approve it and then entertain motions to amend?
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Harvey Construction. Funds are available in Department 183, Economic Development, Performing Arts Center Bond.
So motions to amend are in order.
Right.
Alderwoman Karen.
I'll make the motion that we add, $400,000
Not to exceed.
as part of this contract,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed $400,000.
So 2.9%, not to exceed $400,000.
Right.
Is the motion to amend. Alderwoman Clee.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. I'm not saying this is a bad motion I'm gonna be reserved on it because where I propose an alternative idea, I just want to state to the board that if this motion should fail for the complete dollar amount, then I will introduce another motion to have further guidance by Mr. Cummings. So I just want to exercise that I could bring forth another motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderwoman Karen.
Yep, thank you. I think that you're misunderstanding that. Mr. Cummings has to come to this full board now monthly or quarterly to give us an update. So that shouldn't affect that we want to put in a dollar amount in this particular contract. He still has to do that, whether we have a dollar amount or not. So that's why I'm asking that we put that dollar amount in there. And that way, we're covered as well. Because the first phone call we're going to get is, why are you giving an approval on something that has no dollar amount for a large project? And I'm all for the Performing Arts Center, don't get me wrong, but I also have to do my due diligence to the people in Ward 7 and throughout the city that have those kind of questions. And I certainly don't want people coming here and haranguing when Mr. Cummings is trying to do his job.
Well, I think that Mr. Cummings is comfortable with the $400,000 not to exceed, right?
Yes, with the explicit understanding that we may need to, if the money comes in less, repurpose those funds into another place
But
in
we've
the
already
project.
established that if less than 400,000 is required, no repurposing motion is necessary, because this is a single-purpose project. This is just one contract within a single project, not moving from one purpose to one.
Wonderful.
As
Appropriation.
Mr. Griffin said, see, lights, street lights to the fire department.
Right. Okay.
Or street, where are we reallocating that to the
LED
school buildings?
school
Yeah,
buildings.
to the school buildings. All right, so the motion is not to exceed 400. Alderman O'Brien.
Well, therefore, if Mr. Cummings, if I may, Mr. Mayor, if Mr. Cummings is content with that, and with due respect to the Ward 7 Alderman, then I will withdraw my previous statement of introducing another subsequent motion and support all the Ward 7 Alderman. Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I have two questions. One's clerical and one is to Mr. Cummings. Would it be the same on both of these motions? So we do the 400,000 on both? No, that's just construction. Okay, thank you. And then my second question, I knew
Yes.
was just, where does this wording go in where do we want to put it? Is it before funds are available?
Well, we understand, if the motion if the amendment passes and the motion passes as amended, we will deal with legal to put it in the right place.
Okay, that sounds fine.
Any other discussion? Alderman Lopez, or no, you're Alderman Dowd. Alderman Lopez, Dowd, what is it?
Save my beard.
What?
You'll never see it again. So I just wanted to, no, that's the same. So I just wanted to thank the committee for making this decision, because I think having the to be determined amount, Director Cummings is just doing his job. Like, he's obviously would prefer to be able to do this quickly and as much open checkbooking as possible, but that will blow up in our face. I think this is an incredibly heavily scrutinized project. I think if the Board of Aldermen isn't going to exercise its responsibilities and make sure we at least put a cap on how much money we're spending, it's only going to spell disaster for both the project as it's perceived by the public and progress for getting it done on time. So I'm really grateful that everybody's had this discussion, particularly Alderman Karen for being such a strong advocate for it.
All right, well, thank you, Alderman Dowd. Oh, Lopez.
Just to
What?
clarify, Alderman Lopez did not propose the open-ended. In case anybody's there getting ready to email me.
All right,
So the motion
the
is
motion is to amend
amend the motion by
to
adding,
$400,000 max,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
aye.
Motion, the amendment passes, so the motion is now before us to approve the contract with a not-to-exceed number of $400,000. All those in favor, is there any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. All right, now we have the next item, Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding architectural manager service contract for 201 Main Street Performing Arts Center with a value of TBD.
And why don't you move it so that then we can entertain amendments if we wish.
I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Icon Architecture, Inc. Source of funding is Department 183 Economic Development Performing Arts Center Bond.
Now, the percent here is proposed as 10%. So if we use the 1.35 million, 13.5 million, 10% would be 1,350,000, correct? Does someone want to make a motion to insert a not to exceed number of $1,350,000? Alderwoman Karen.
Yes, I'll make a motion to amend the architectural manager service contract to read a value of $1,350,000?
Not to exceed $1,350,000.
Not to exceed, okay.
1,300,000.
Any discussion on that motion to amend?
Got
Nothing? All those in favor of the motion to amend say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So the motion is now before us to approve the contract with
amended.
the amendment to be included by legal, not to exceed $1,350,000. Any discussion on that motion to amend? All those in favor of the motion, or it's not the motion to amend, it's to approve as already amended, sorry. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Unfinished business, none. Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Thank you. New business, none. Record of expenditures.
I move that the Finance Committee has complied with the city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period of December 28th, 2018 to January 10th, 2019.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. General discussion. Any general discussion? Next is public comment. Nobody's from the public, so I don't think there'll be any comment. Remarks by Alderman. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, and I want to thank Alderman Karen. I don't want you to think I was against you there, but I was trying to come up in a way with the compromise of the situation, because I think as the people voted, they do support the performing arts, and I know a lot of us do, and trying to look for the best way, but I think you were prudent, and coming up, I think the taxpayers would like to see a clear dollar amount, so it was my pleasure to support you with that. Thank you.
Alderwoman Klee.
I'm sorry.
Alderman Lopez.
I'm not even on this committee, so I appreciate the recognition. Yesterday, on the committee that I actually was on, I made a comment to some of the other aldermen that I would be playing at an open mic for charity for the Honduras Outreach Team on Sunday at 5:30 p.m. at Liquid Therapy. Some skepticism was raised, and I would like to point out that I can play guitar, I can sing. If you don't believe me, then come on Sunday at 5:30 to Liquid Therapy.
Is there an admission charge?
No,
or-
there's no cover.
I wouldn't.
Oh.
Lots of raffle items.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm just teasing you.
Any other, Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Okay. There's several, I guess, celebrations going on this weekend, and I just want to share that with Nashua. And the first one is Sunday. It was a Saturday. Sorry, it's Saturday at First Baptist Church in Nashua. They have a great celebration for Martin Luther King with speakers and music from many different choirs, and that's free. There's no admission charge for that. And I think, did I say it was at 6? I think it's 6 o'clock. And then on Monday, Southern New Hampshire Outreach of Black Unity will be celebrating our 35th annual Martin Luther King breakfast at the same place, which is Alpine Grove, and it starts at 8:30. And our keynote speaker is the Reverend Eric Jackson. He's the senior pastor at Brookside Congregational Church. He's the president of the Manchester National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And he is also the co-chair, New Hampshire co-chair for the Poor People's Campaign. So we're going to have a good time. We also have a youth speaker, and it's Jamila Shanti Scales, and she's the elected 2019 Board of Education North High School student representative to the Board of Education. So we're going to hear from some great speakers, and we have other students that are performing. And our mayor will be there, of course, as always. We did get confirmation from Senator Hassan, as well as from Congresswoman Annie Custer. So we're going to have a good time this year, and quite a few other officers and city officials. So I invite my colleagues here as well. And to the city of Nashua, please come out and join us. It's $35 in advance. You can call 603-880-4537, and I will make sure you get your tickets. And it's $40 at the door. Youth and students are $20. And 4 and under is free, because it really is like a family affair. It really is. So that's
While
it.
we're on that subject, Nashua was the first city in New Hampshire to create a Martin Luther King holiday, some 10 years or so before the state of New Hampshire did. So
Yeah.
this was in 88, 89, maybe?
Who was the mayor when that happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are very happy to be celebrating those holidays. Any other remarks by Alderman? Alderwoman Clee.
I don't have so much as a remark as a question. Director Cummings made a comment about if he had to come in front of the board, because sometimes there could be long periods of time, but we can call the special finance committee meeting, correct? If we needed
yes,
to.
we
I
could.
just wanted to let the public know that we may not have to come because there may not be anything in front of the board, but when there's something that's important and needs to be escalated, we can call a special meeting and get us all here. So, thank you.
Alderman Laws.
I just wanted to mirror what Alderman Lopez said. I'm very proud of the discussion that happened tonight in the chamber. I think everyone did a really great job. I didn't chime in much because you had it handled. But we did the right thing, and good work, especially you, Alderman Karen.
Alderwoman Karen.
Oh, it's Alderman, that's okay. Alderman O'Brien, I appreciate it. I know that we do a lot of things together, and we don't always agree, but I think it's important because this is a big project. I mean, look at what happened when we were trying to do a playground that, took up all of our time. So I think that having a number there will help us, and it won't delay the project because, as Mr. Griffin has stated, it's a project, and you can move that money around within the project to use as needed. If it was going outside of the project, then he would have to come back here. But I think that we would be doing a disservice if we didn't put some numbers in there, and I appreciate your support on that. Thank you. And thank you, Mayor, for getting the numbers, because I was trying to figure out
No
how
problem.
much we should put in there.
No problem. It was my calculator, it wasn't me. So,
I didn't have.
any other discussion? Alderman O'Brien.
Go Patriots, and a motion to adjourn.
I second the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passed.
We're at
Somebody stuck me
7:36.
You're going to go save him?
Yeah.